What does it mean to truly find peace? Is it the absence of struggle, the quieting of the mind, or something deeper, something that exists even in the presence of thoughts, emotions, and challenges? Too often, we search for serenity as if it is a distant destination, a final stop on the journey of life. But what if the journey itself is the destination? Today, we will embark on a transformative journey through the life of Hiroshi, a young man burdened by endless thoughts and uncertainties. Like many of us, Hiroshi longed for clarity and freedom from the chaos within his mind. In search of wisdom, he sought out a Zen master living deep in the mountains. Through 5 profound lessons, Hiroshi discovered that true peace does not come from the elimination of thoughts but from the ability to exist within them, to observe, accept, and embrace each moment as it is. These lessons are not just for Hiroshi. They are for all of us. They are the guiding principles that can help us navigate the storms of our minds, free ourselves from attachment, and find harmony within. If you have ever felt lost in your thoughts, burdened by the past, or anxious about the future, then these teachings hold something powerful for you. Before we begin, if you find value in learning timeless wisdom that can transform your perspective and bring you peace, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Here, we explore the depths of mindfulness, Buddhist philosophy, and personal transformation. Join our community on this journey toward enlightenment. Let's walk this path together. The 5 lessons Hiroshi learned. Lesson 1: The art of mindfulness, the practice of observing without judgment, of allowing thoughts to pass like flowing water rather than being caught in their currents. Lesson 2: The art of letting go, understanding that just as a tree releases its blossoms to the wind, we too must learn to release what no longer serves us. Lesson 3: Facing the storms of the mind, accepting that thoughts, like storms, are natural and temporary. Rather than fearing them, we learn to sit with them and let them pass. Lesson 4: The presence in each moment, realizing that peace is not in the past or the future, but in the fullness of the present moment. Lesson 5: The journey without a destination, discovering that the path itself is the purpose, and that we are not meant to arrive at stillness, but to walk in harmony with it. Through these lessons, Hiroshi's story mirrors the journey we all must take. His struggles are our struggles. His realizations are the wisdom we, too, can embrace. As we step into these teachings, I invite you to reflect on your own life. Which of these lessons do you feel you need the most right now? Let me know in the comments below. Your engagement in this practice is a step toward self-awareness and transformation. Now, let's begin the journey. Hiroshi's path to enlightenment starts now. Subscribe now and join our community dedicated to mindfulness, wisdom, and inner peace. Let's embark on this journey together. Hiroshi was a young man burdened by endless thoughts. His mind was a storm of worries, about the past, about the future, about things he could not change. He longed for peace, for a way to still the raging waves inside him. One day, he decided to seek wisdom from an old Zen master, living deep in the mountains. Through their conversations and experiences, Hiroshi learned 5 profound lessons that changed his understanding of the mind and the nature of thoughts. Each lesson was taught through a moment of experience, a challenge Hiroshi had to face, and a realization that led him closer to inner peace. Lesson 1: The art of mindfulness Chan-nim. Hiroshi's mind was restless, filled with thoughts that seemed to race endlessly. Upon reaching the monastery, he found the Zen master sitting by a stream, observing the gentle flow of water. The master motioned for him to sit beside him. "Hiroshi, why have you come?" the master asked. "My thoughts never stop," Hiroshi admitted. "I want to silence them." The master smiled and picked up a leaf, placing it on the water's surface. "Watch," he instructed. Hiroshi focused on the leaf as it drifted, carried by the current. The master continued, "Your mind is like this river. Thoughts will always come and go, just as the water flows. The task is not to stop them but to observe them without being carried away. At first, Hiroshi struggled. His mind kept interfering, analyzing each passing thought. But as the hours passed, he began to simply watch, without resistance, without engagement. He started to see his thoughts like ripples on the surface of a pond, appearing and fading away without needing his interference. The master broke the silence. If you were to plunge your hands into the water and try to hold on to it, would you succeed? No, Hiroshi answered. Exactly. Clinging to thoughts only creates struggle. Let them pass like clouds in the sky. That evening, as Hiroshi lay under the vast night sky, he no longer tried to suppress his thoughts. He allowed them to come and go, understanding that he was merely the observer, not the captive of his mind. Lesson: observe without judgment. Thoughts come and go like flowing water, just watch them pass. As Hiroshi arrived at the monastery, he saw the old Zen master sitting beside a small stream, watching the water flow. The master invited him to sit. Hiroshi, why have you come? The master asked. My thoughts never stop, Hiroshi admitted. I want to silence them. The master picked up a leaf and placed it on the water. Watch, he said. Hiroshi observed the leaf drifting gently, carried by the current. The master continued, the mind is like this river. Thoughts will come and go, just as the water flows. Your task is not to stop them, but to observe without getting carried away. For hours, Hiroshi practiced simply watching the stream, without resisting, without analyzing. He began to see his thoughts as passing ripples rather than overwhelming tides. Lesson: observe without judgment. Thoughts come and go like flowing water, just watch them pass. Lesson 2: the art of letting go. Byongbo. One morning, the Zen master handed Hiroshi a broom and pointed toward the temple garden. Sweep the fallen cherry blossoms, he instructed. Hiroshi nodded and got to work. The blossoms were delicate, scattered across the ground in soft pink clusters. He carefully swept them into a pile. But as soon as he turned away, a gust of wind scattered them again. He sighed and repeated the task, only for the wind to undo his work once more. Frustrated, he frowned. Master. No matter how many times I sweep, the wind keeps blowing them back. I can never truly finish. The master chuckled and sat on a nearby stone. Why do you resist the wind, Hiroshi? Hiroshi furrowed his brows. Because I want the garden to be clean. The master picked up a blossom from the ground and let it go, watching it float away in the breeze. The tree does not hold on to its petals. Hiroshi. When the time comes, it lets them go without resistance. Hiroshi paused, watching the petals swirl in the wind. The tree had let them fall without regret, without effort. And yet, he was the one struggling to keep them in place. But how can I simply let go? Hiroshi asked, lowering the broom. The master gestured for Hiroshi to sit beside him under the cherry tree. Imagine your thoughts are like these petals. You cling to memories, expectations, and worries as if you must control where they land. But just like the wind, life moves things beyond our grasp. When you learn to let go, you become as free as the blossoms themselves. Hiroshi let out a slow breath. He thought of all the things he had been holding on to, his regrets, his fears, his need for control. What if, instead of gripping them tightly, he allowed them to pass naturally? Try again, the master said. This time, Hiroshi picked up a handful of petals and, instead of sweeping them into a pile, he let them drift from his fingers. He watched as they danced in the air before settling gently on the earth. A weight seemed to lift from his chest. The garden did not need to be perfect. It simply needed to be. That evening, as Hiroshi reflected on the lesson, he realized how much of his suffering had come from resisting what was beyond his control. He had been trying to hold on to things that were meant to pass. The next morning, when he awoke to find more blossoms scattered across the ground, he simply smiled. Lesson: let go of what you cannot control. Holding on creates suffering, while release brings peace. One morning, the master asked Hiroshi to sweep the garden. As Hiroshi worked, the wind blew cherry blossoms from the trees. He kept trying to sweep them into neat piles, but the wind scattered them again. Frustrated, Hiroshi sighed. I can never finish. The wind keeps undoing my work. The master chuckled. Why are you trying to control the wind? Hiroshi looked at him, confused. Just as the tree lets go of its blossoms, we must learn to let go of attachments. Holding on to things beyond our control only brings suffering. Hiroshi watched the petals dance in the wind and realized, life, too, is ever-changing. Trying to control every moment only creates frustration. That day, he stopped fighting the wind and simply enjoyed the beauty of the falling petals. Lesson: let go of what you cannot control. Holding on creates suffering, while release brings peace. Lesson 3: Facing the storms of the mind. One night, a fierce storm hit the mountains. The wind howled through the trees, shaking the monastery's wooden walls, while rain lashed against the rooftops. Thunder cracked like a whip, making Hiroshi flinch. He sat inside his small room, heart pounding, unable to sleep. His mind was just as turbulent, full of anxieties, regrets, and worries about things beyond his control. The louder the storm outside, the wilder his thoughts became. Seeing Hiroshi's distress, the Zen master appeared at his door. Come, he said simply, motioning for Hiroshi to follow him outside. Hiroshi hesitated. Master, it's dangerous. The storm. The master smiled. Do you think hiding from it will make it disappear? Curious and somewhat reluctant, Hiroshi stepped out into the storm. The cold wind slapped his face, and the rain soaked his robes in an instant. He shivered, but the master remained still, his face calm despite the chaos around him. Tell me, Hiroshi, the master said, his voice barely audible above the storm. Why do you fear this? Hiroshi wiped rain from his face. Because it's unpredictable. It's powerful. I cannot stop it. The master nodded. And what happens if you fight against the wind? Hiroshi instinctively turned away from the harsh gusts, shielding himself. It makes things worse, he admitted. Exactly, the master said. Your mind is like the sky, and your thoughts are like this storm. You cannot stop them, nor control their intensity. But you can choose how you face them. Hiroshi watched as lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating the swirling clouds. He realized that no matter how loud the storm raged, it would eventually pass. Just like his worries, his fears, and his restless thoughts. But how do I find peace when my mind is in turmoil? Hiroshi asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The master walked to the edge of a small pond, rain splashing onto the surface. Watch the water, he instructed. Hiroshi looked down. The pond was disturbed by the raindrops, its surface rippling chaotically. Then, the master crouched and cupped his hands in the water, holding it still in his palms. Though the storm raged around them, the water in his hands remained calm. The world outside is chaotic, the master said, but peace comes from within. If you learn to quiet your mind, external storms will no longer disturb you. Hiroshi took a deep breath. He closed his eyes, feeling the rain against his skin, the wind against his face. Instead of resisting, he accepted it. The storm outside did not have to be a storm within him. After some time, the rain began to slow, the thunder rolling into the distance. Hiroshi opened his eyes. The storm had not lasted forever, just as his thoughts, no matter how overwhelming, would also pass. That night, as he lay in bed, he no longer feared the storm or his thoughts. He let them come, knowing they would also go. Lesson: do not fear the storms of your mind. Accept them, and they will pass on their own. One night, a fierce storm hit the mountains. Thunder roared, and lightning flashed across the sky. Hiroshi paced anxiously inside his small room, unable to sleep. Seeing his distress, the master took him outside. "Why do you fear the storm?" the master asked. "It is loud, powerful, and chaotic," Hiroshi said. The master pointed at the sky. "Does your fear change the storm?" Hiroshi shook his head. "Then why resist it? The mind is like the sky, and thoughts are like storms. You cannot stop them, but you can watch them pass." Hiroshi stood in the rain, feeling the wind against his face. He stopped resisting and simply accepted the storm. Moments later, he felt a strange sense of calm despite the chaos around him. Lesson: do not fear the storms of your mind. Accept them, and they will pass on their own. Lesson 4: the presence in each moment. The morning air was crisp as Hiroshi sat in the monastery garden, his mind racing with thoughts of the past and worries about the future. His failures haunted him, and his fears about what lay ahead consumed him. He barely noticed the beauty of the cherry blossoms around him or the warmth of the sunlight on his skin. Sensing his distraction, the Zen master approached and handed Hiroshi a small cup of tea. "Drink," he instructed. Hiroshi reached for the cup, but as his mind wandered, his hands trembled. The tea nearly spilled. He caught himself and quickly steadied the cup. The master chuckled. "Where were you just now?" "I was right here, master," Hiroshi replied, confused. The master shook his head. "No, your body was here, but your mind was lost, drifting between memories and worries. True peace is found in neither the past nor the future, but in this very moment." Hiroshi frowned, unsure how to grasp this lesson. The master motioned for him to follow. They walked in silence to a quiet part of the monastery grounds where a small pond reflected the sky. The master knelt beside it and pointed at Hiroshi's reflection. "When the water is still, you can see yourself clearly. But if you stir it, what happens?" Hiroshi knelt and touched the water, causing ripples to spread across the surface. His reflection blurred and distorted. "This is your mind," the master said. "When it is clouded by regret and anxiety, you cannot see the present clearly. But when you allow yourself to be still, everything comes into focus." Hiroshi watched the water settle. His reflection returned, clear and calm. He understood. His endless dwelling on the past and his fears of the future were robbing him of the one thing he truly had, this moment. The master stood and handed Hiroshi the cup of tea once more. "Now, drink again, but this time, be fully present." Hiroshi wrapped his hands around the cup, feeling its warmth. He lifted it to his lips, inhaling the delicate aroma of the tea. As he took a sip, he focused entirely on the taste, the sensation, the moment. For the first time, he truly experienced it, not as a passing action, but as something complete in itself. A wave of peace washed over him. That night, as Hiroshi lay beneath the stars, he did not think of yesterday's failures or tomorrow's uncertainties. He simply breathed, aware of the cool night air and the steady rhythm of his heart. And in that stillness, he found what he had been searching for. Lesson: true peace is found in the present moment. Do not dwell in the past or chase the future, simply be here. One afternoon, the master gave Hiroshi a cup of tea. As Hiroshi reached for it, his thoughts wandered to the past, his regrets, his mistakes. His hands shook, and he nearly dropped the cup. The master smiled. "Where are you, Hiroshi?" Hiroshi blinked. "Here, of course." "No," the master said. "Your body is here. But your mind is lost elsewhere." True peace is in this moment. Not in the past, not in the future. Now. Hiroshi took a deep breath and focused only on the warmth of the cup in his hands. The scent of the tea, the taste of the first sip. For the first time, he felt truly present. Lesson: peace is found in the present moment. Do not dwell in the past or chase the future, simply be here. Lesson 5: The journey without a destination. One crisp morning, Hiroshi sat atop a hill overlooking the monastery, gazing at the winding mountain path below. He had spent weeks learning from the Zen master. Yet his mind still carried questions. He longed for the day when his mind would be free of thoughts, when he would reach a perfect state of stillness. Unable to keep his doubts to himself, he approached the master and asked, "I have practiced mindfulness, let go of attachments, faced my thoughts, and learned to be present. But my mind still has thoughts. When will I reach true emptiness?" The master chuckled. "Emptiness is not a place, Hiroshi. It is a way of traveling." He gestured toward the mountain path. "You have walked this road many times. Have you ever reached the end?" Hiroshi hesitated. "No, master. The road leads beyond the hills, and beyond them, more paths unfold." The master nodded. "And so it is with the mind. There is no final point. No perfect state where thoughts cease forever. The path of peace is not a destination, but a way of walking." Hiroshi furrowed his brows. "Then what is the purpose of this journey if there is no end?" The master smiled and stood. "Walk with me." They descended from the hilltop, stepping onto the stone path leading through the monastery gardens. The air was filled with the scent of blooming jasmine. Birds chirped softly, and the distant sound of flowing water reached Hiroshi's ears. As they walked, the master suddenly stopped and asked, "Are you enjoying this walk?" Hiroshi nodded. "Yes, master. The air is fresh, the path is peaceful." The master continued, "Yet you do not ask when we will arrive. Why?" Hiroshi thought for a moment before responding, "Because I am enjoying the journey itself." The master clapped his hands. "Exactly. You do not walk simply to arrive, you walk because walking itself is meaningful. In the same way, your spiritual journey is not about reaching an end where thoughts disappear. It is about learning to walk with them, to accept them, and to be at peace regardless." Hiroshi fell silent. He had spent so long seeking an end to his inner struggles, believing peace was something to be attained at the end of his practice. But now, he saw his mistake. Peace was not a reward waiting at the finish line, it was something to be cultivated with each step. As they walked further, they reached a small wooden bridge over a flowing stream. The master stopped again and pointed at the water below. "Does the river have a final destination?" Hiroshi shook his head. "No, master. It flows continuously, joining other waters. Merging with the ocean, only to rise again as rain." The master nodded. "And so must we flow, Hiroshi. We do not seek an end. We embrace the movement, the learning, the becoming." They stood in silence for a while, listening to the rhythm of the water. Hiroshi took a deep breath, feeling the truth of the master's words settle in his heart. That evening, as Hiroshi sat in meditation, he no longer chased after emptiness. He no longer sought to silence his thoughts. Instead, he simply sat, breathing, existing in the moment, knowing that he was already walking the path he had been searching for all along. As he prepared to leave the monastery, the master gave him one final piece of advice. "Wherever you go, Hiroshi, remember, each step is the destination. There is no rush. There is only the journey." Hiroshi bowed deeply, gratitude shining in his eyes. He walked down the mountain, not as a man seeking peace, but as one who had already found it within himself. Lesson: inner peace is not a destination, but a lifelong journey. Keep walking, keep practicing. One day, Hiroshi approached the master and said, I have practiced mindfulness, let go of attachments, faced my thoughts, and learned to be present. But my mind still has thoughts. When will I reach true emptiness? The master laughed. Emptiness is not a place, Hiroshi. It is a way of traveling. He pointed to the mountain path. You have walked this road many times. Have you ever reached the end? Hiroshi shook his head. The journey of the mind is the same. There is no final point. No perfect state of stillness. There is only practice, moment by moment. Hiroshi understood. He no longer sought an end to his thoughts. Instead, he embraced the journey, knowing that true peace is found in the practice itself. Lesson: inner peace is not a destination, but a lifelong journey. Keep walking, keep practicing. Final reflection: embracing the journey. As Hiroshi descended the mountain, he no longer sought a final destination. He had learned that peace is not something to chase, it is something to live, moment by moment. He no longer feared his thoughts but accepted them as part of the ever-flowing river of existence. The lessons he had learned were not the end of his path, but the beginning of a lifelong practice. And so it is for all of us. The pursuit of peace, the art of letting go, the ability to be present, these are not things we achieve once and for all. They are practices we return to, again and again. Every day is another step on the journey, and every moment is an opportunity to embrace stillness within movement. Now, I turn to you. Which lesson resonated with you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your journey matters, and your insights can inspire others. If you found these lessons meaningful, be sure to subscribe and join our growing community of seekers. Tap the notification bell so you never miss a new video filled with wisdom, mindfulness, and spiritual growth. Thank you for walking this path with us. May you find peace, presence, and wisdom in every step. Until next time, keep embracing the journey. The journey. The journey. The journey.